You never really expect a knock at 7:12 a.m. to be life-changing. Usually, that kind of knock means a neighbor wants to borrow sugar, or some Amazon package got dropped off at the wrong door. But when you're living in a beachside community policed by an HOA president with more ambition than a senator in an election year, early morning knocks mean one thing: trouble. The knock wasn't gentle either. It was a calculated, repeated thud, like someone was trying to knock the sense out of my front door. I rolled out of bed groggy, still in my gym shorts and a faded hoodie, and opened the door to find her. Karen. Blonde bob. White linen pantsuit. Clipboard in hand. She looked like a cruise director ready to host a mutiny. "Good morning, Colin," she said, her lips pulling back into a smile that didn't even try to reach her eyes. "We need you to unlock the cabin. Guests are arriving by 10. At first, I blinked. Then I laughed, assuming she was joking. "Karen, this is my cabin." "What guests?" She raised her clipboard and tapped it with a red-painted nail. "As per the Community Hospitality Agreement, your property is listed as an optional venue for overflow accommodation during peak holiday weeks. You didn't object in the last board meeting." "I wasn't in the last board meeting," I interrupted. "I never attend those things, and even if I did, this place isn't part of the shared rental registry." Karen's eyes narrowed. She didn't like being contradicted, especially by someone like me, single, 35, barely shaves, and according to her own words last summer, a transient bachelor with no long-term commitment to community cohesion. "Be that as it may," she continued, "we've already promised it to guests arriving today. A couple from Connecticut. Very polite. Don't worry, they won't be using your personal things. I've had volunteers move anything sentimental into storage." I was so stunned I almost missed the key part. "Wait, what do you mean you moved my stuff?" Karen didn't flinch. "Just a few things. I have the master key copy from before your locks were changed. HOA bylaws allow for common access in the event of a community need." I stared at her, the fog of sleep gone now, replaced by the slow burn of rage spreading through my chest. "Karen, you entered my cabin without permission, removed my property, and are trying to rent it out to strangers?" "Guests," she corrected, smiling like she was talking to a toddler. "And yes, because you're the only beachfront property not participating in the community accommodation plan. That's because I never agreed to it." "You never objected," she said with that smug tone HOA presidents reserve for people they think can't fight back. "Silence counts as tacit consent. It's all here in the guidelines." I'd heard enough. "Karen," I said, taking a step forward. "You step foot on my property again, and I'm calling the sheriff. This cabin isn't a timeshare. It's my home." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, and I knew she hadn't expected me to push back. She wasn't used to resistance. Not here in Blue Harbor Shores, where people went along to get along. Where residents feared fines more than storms. But I didn't move here to be part of a step-forward community. I moved here to write. To breathe salt air. To escape the kind of micromanagement that had haunted me in my old corporate life. "You'll regret this," she said finally, turning on her heel. "Don't say I didn't try to be civil." She marched back up the walkway, heels clicking like the ticking countdown of a time bomb. Little did I know, she wasn't bluffing. By noon, the war had begun. By the time noon rolled around, I had convinced myself that Karen was bluffing. That maybe she'd cool off, have a matcha latte, and realize that trying to turn someone's private home into a coastal guest lodge was, at best, absurd and at worst, illegal. But I underestimated Karen. Karen didn't back down. Karen escalated. It started with a knock, not from Karen this time, but from a couple. Late 50s, sun hats, matching salmon polos. The kind of couple you might find reviewing boat shoes on YouTube. "Hi there," the man said brightly. "We're the Galloways. Karen said you'd have the cabin ready by now." I looked at them, then over their shoulders at the two suitcases resting on my gravel driveway, and something inside me snapped into focus. "She was mistaken," I said, flatly. "This cabin isn't for rent." It's my home. The woman blinked. But, we signed up months ago. Paid a deposit. She said it was all part of the HOA's summer comfort program. She lied. There was a pause, and then the man gave a weak chuckle. Well, this is awkward. They shuffled away, dragging their wheels down the drive like defeated tourists in a cancelled dream. I watched them go, part of me feeling bad, but not nearly as bad as I felt about what happened next. At 2:15 p.m., I received a violation notice. Bright yellow. Taped to the front door like a crime scene tag. Violation, property not maintained for community use. Fine, $350. I almost laughed. Almost. At 4:03 p.m., a second notice arrived. This one hand-delivered by a teenager in a HOA vest who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Violation, improper refusal of registered guests. Fine, $500. I took that one straight to the trash can. But the third notice came with a twist. At 5:40 p.m., a man in a red golf cart rolled up with a clipboard and a tool belt. He looked like a rejected contestant from a home renovation show. Evening, he said, as if we were old friends. I'm here to install the keypad lock for the guest entry program. I stared. You're what? Karen's orders. All homes participating in the comfort program are getting electronic entry pads for ease of access. You install that thing, I said, stepping onto the porch, and you'll be pulling it out of your nose. He blinked at me. Blinked again. Then quietly got back into the cart and drove away. It was funny until the sun went down. Around 9:45 p.m., I heard something outside. A low mechanical hum. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. Down near the side gate, a van idled, its back doors open, revealing a stack of folding chairs, tablecloths, and what appeared to be a chafing dish warmer. Karen was setting up for a wedding. I walked down the path and found two teenagers unloading boxes onto my property. Stop, I said. Turn around. You're trespassing. They looked confused. Karen said this is the venue for her cousin's rehearsal dinner. We were told the key would be under the mat. There was no key. And now, there would be no patience either. I took photos. Of the teens. The van. The chairs. I documented everything. And when I tried to call Karen, I got her voicemail. Her recording was a peppy robotic version of herself. Hi. You've reached Karen, president of the Blue Harbor Shores Homeowners Association. Your community is my priority. Leave a message. I left one. By the time I went back inside, my hands were shaking, not with fear, but fury. This wasn't just harassment. It was an invasion. And it was just beginning. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and sat on my couch with a single lamp casting a warm halo over my coffee table. I poured a drink. Then I opened my laptop. Karen wanted to play games? Fine. I was going to fight back, but not with anger. Not with yelling. No. I was going to win with something she could never outmatch. Receipts. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office dressed in a t-shirt that said private property is not a suggestion. The receptionist, a woman named Trina who always looked like she was 5 minutes from quitting, gave me a slow blink and asked, "Here to see Karen?" "No," I said. "Here to see her resignation letter." She didn't even raise an eyebrow. Karen wasn't in, of course. She was off-site, according to Trina. Probably staging more surprise weddings on someone else's dock. But I didn't need her. What I needed was in the community records binder, which sat in the glass cabinet across from the front desk, locked but clearly visible. "This is public," I said, nodding toward it. "As a homeowner, I have the right to review the HOA charter and voting records." Trina didn't argue. She just slid open the cabinet, handed me the binder, and muttered, "Try not to set anything on fire." I spent the next 2 hours poring over that binder like it held national secrets. And in a way, it did. There it was, tucked between the HOA meeting minutes from March in a poorly formatted Excel sheet labeled Guest Rotation Roster. Amendment 14A, Community Comfort Program. Approved via proxy vote. Filed under Seasonal Emergency Housing Contingency. Authorized by HOA President Whitmore in absence of majority attendance. Proxy vote. Emergency housing. Absence of majority attendance. Translation: Karen had passed the amendment at a meeting no one showed up to. She'd signed off on it herself and snuck it into the back pages of the binder like a child hiding vegetables under mashed potatoes. But that wasn't even the juicy part. The real bombshell came in the ledger tucked at the very back: vendor reimbursement logs. Karen had submitted reimbursement claims for decor installation, site preparation, security services, and, get this, brunch logistics for her cousin's wedding. To the tune of $4,862.17. All reimbursed. All approved. And all billed under community enhancement expenses. She was using HOA funds to pay for her personal party. That was fraud, and it was going to bring her down. I left the office that afternoon armed with photos, screenshots, and enough legal precedent to make her clipboard tremble. But just as I reached my car, a voice called out behind me. "Hey, you're the guy with the cabin, right?" I turned to see a man leaning against a weathered golf cart. Early 40s, sandy hair, grease under his nails. He wore a name tag that said Facilities Support, Dave. "I've been looking for you," he said. "You might want to see this." Dave pulled a thumb drive from his pocket and handed it to me like it was state evidence. "I fix stuff for the HOA," he said. "Karen's been, well, let's just say she makes us record everything. Claims it's for quality assurance. I figured someone ought to see what she's really doing with all that footage." I looked down at the drive, then back at him. "Why me?" Dave shrugged. "Because you're the only one who told her no." That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop. It was hours of security footage, poorly angled shots of HOA property, time-stamped and silent. But buried between blurry images of empty sidewalks and storm drains was the goldmine: a full video of Karen entering my cabin 3 weeks ago, unlocking the door with a spare key, walking in with 2 volunteers, and starting a walkthrough for what she called the Whitmore Gallagher Coastal Ceremony. She was literally giving a venue tour. In the footage, she pointed to the fireplace and said, "We'll hang the welcome banner here," then waved toward my personal reading nook, saying, "This can be the bridal prep space. Just move those books." I watched in stunned silence as she opened my fridge, frowned at the yogurt selection, and instructed her helper to make a note to bring Prosecco. This wasn't just trespassing. This was delusion on parade. I saved the video. Then backed it up in 4 places. Then I texted my cousin Maya, who just so happens to work for a local news outlet. Her reply came in seconds. "Oh. It's on." It's funny how fast the word special meeting can spread when there's HOA drama brewing. Within 24 hours of emailing Karen the subject line: "Urgent, reimbursement audit and unauthorized entry footage," she announced an emergency board session to address baseless accusations and community discord. Held at the community clubhouse, it drew the biggest crowd Blue Harbor Shores had seen since the pelican infestation of 18. The room was packed. Retirees in windbreakers. Yoga moms clutching smoothies. Teenagers with phones out, hoping for drama. Even the couple Karen tried to sneak into my cabin, the Galloways, sat in the back looking sheepish. Karen, as always, commanded center stage. Dressed in seafoam green, she stood behind the podium with her signature clipboard and a stack of manila folders labeled Truth and Transparency. "I want to begin," she said, "by dispelling dangerous rumors." She clicked her remote, and a projector displayed a slide titled Community Commitment. "I did not," she said slowly, "break into anyone's property." Someone coughed. Another person whispered, "Wait for it." She continued, "Yes, I utilized temporary community access during what I believed was an inactive property period. But that is not the same as trespassing." I raised my hand. "May I speak?" Karen glanced down at her clipboard. "You're not on the agenda, Colin." "I brought a guest," I said. "And she is." The side door opened. Enter Maya. 32. Curly hair in a high bun. Press badge clipped to her collar. A camera bag on her hip and the kind of slow, practiced smile that said, "I eat petty tyrants for breakfast." "Good evening," she said. "I'm Maya Hernandez with Channel 7. I'm also Colin's cousin, and I've come with documentation relevant to tonight's claims." Karen blinked. The color drained from her face. "This is a closed meeting." "Not anymore," Maya replied. "According to HOA bylaws, any homeowner can invite a representative during agenda disputes. I'm his legal representative tonight." Maya handed me a USB drive, which I plugged into the projector. First slide. HOA expense report, Karen's wedding line items. Second slide. Footage still number 1, Karen unlocking Colin's cabin. Still number 2, Karen walking through the cabin with guests. Still number 3, Karen toasting wine inside his kitchen. The room erupted. Gasps. Whispers. One guy in the back yelled, "That's his fridge." Karen's face froze in the same shape her smirk usually started in. But now it twitched. "This is out of context," she said, reaching for the laptop. Maya calmly pulled it away. "Karen," I said, "you accessed private property without consent, repurposed it for a private event, and spent nearly $5,000 in community funds to host a wedding you didn't even have permission to hold. This isn't leadership, it's fraud." Karen's voice shook. "I did what I thought was best for the community." "But the community didn't agree," said a voice from the side. It was Dave, the facilities guy from before. He stood holding a small stack of papers. "These are my logs," he said. "Every time I was asked to install or prep something under Karen's direction. I recorded it all." He passed the pages to Maya, who skimmed them, then raised an eyebrow. "You claimed these were part of the HOA comfort program. But according to Dave's notes, you used community beautification funds to install temporary lighting for a DJ and tiki torches." Another wave of gasps. Karen stammered. "You don't understand. I've dedicated years to this neighborhood. My fiancé, he left me 2 months ago. The wedding was all I had left." It got quiet. For a moment, there was real pain in her voice. The room softened, just a little. "And then she ruined it. So I deserve that cabin. You don't even participate in HOA events, Colin. You live up there like the rules don't apply to you. You don't belong here." And there it was. The mask ripped off. No clipboard. No clipboard could fix what she'd just revealed. The meeting adjourned shortly after, with murmurs of a recall vote circulating like beach wind. Karen stormed out, face pale and eyes burning holes through me as she passed. I stood there as neighbors I'd barely spoken to before patted my shoulder and whispered things like, "You did the right thing and it's about time someone stood up to her." But the victory wasn't final. Because 2 days later, I woke up to a message scratched into my windshield in red lipstick. "Enjoy your cabin. It won't last." After the HOA meeting explosion, I thought things might quiet down. I was wrong. The very next morning, I found tire tracks in the sand near my dock, fresh ones. Someone had driven right up during the night, circled the cabin, and left without a sound. No damage, no spray paint, just presence. A reminder. I checked my cameras. Offline. All of them. The cables behind the fuse box had been cleanly clipped. Whoever it was knew what they were doing. That's when I decided to call my contractor friend, Nate. He owed me a favor, and I needed someone to do a sweep, check for hidden damage or devices. If Karen was going to escalate, I wasn't about to sit around waiting for the next move. Nate arrived that afternoon with a tool belt and a portable scanner. We checked every corner. Nothing out of place, until he paused in the living room. "Hey," he said, crouching near the fireplace. "What's this?" There was a faint draft blowing from beneath one of the old floorboards. It was subtle, something you'd never notice unless you were looking. Nate pried it up with a crowbar. Beneath was a shallow crawlspace, and a box. It was wrapped in plastic and covered in decades of dust, likely hidden there by my uncle years ago. Nate handed it to me, and I set it on the table, peeling it open slowly. Inside, a leather-bound journal. Old property maps of Blue Harbor shores. A cassette tape labeled Meeting, September 1987. The journal belonged to my uncle. In it, he detailed the early days of the HOA, how he'd helped found the community before resigning in disgust when corruption started to creep in. He mentioned names. Familiar ones. Including Karen's mother, Eleanor Whitmore. She had once led the HOA just like her daughter, with the same iron fist disguised as neighborhood charm. The journal was full of warnings, land rezoning scams, hush money payments to keep the lakefront communal, secret bylaws buried under mountains of paper. And one entry, circled twice in red ink, stood out. If anything ever happens to me, it'll be because I refuse to let them claim Parcel 27. It belongs to the family. It always has. But they want the water. They want the view. And they'll lie, cheat, or worse to get it. Parcel 27 was my cabin. I checked the maps. One showed a penciled-in line extending the HOA border just far enough to include my cabin, unofficially. The other showed the true boundary, as recorded in the county registrar. My place had never been part of the HOA. Not legally. Not historically. They had been trying to claim it for decades. Suddenly, Karen's obsession made sense. It wasn't about a wedding. It was about legacy. About continuing what her mother had started. My cabin was supposed to be the final prize. I digitized the journal. Took photos. Made backup copies. Then I called Maya. Her voice crackled with excitement through the phone. This isn't just HOA drama anymore. This is historical fraud. And if you're right about this, the HOA could be facing a full audit. Maybe even criminal charges. That night, I sat in the dark with Bear at my feet and the sound of waves tapping against the shore. I played the cassette. My uncle's voice came through, grainy but steady. They think they can buy the coast. But this land tells stories. And one day, someone will listen. I was listening now. But I wasn't the only one. At 1:42 a.m., I got a motion alert. One of the cameras, recently rewired, had picked up a figure on the deck. Karen. She stood there in the dark, staring at the door, arms crossed, like she was waiting to be invited inside. Then, after several long minutes, she left something on the doormat. In the morning, I found it. A letter. Handwritten. This isn't over. You've embarrassed me. But you don't understand the game we're playing. I inherited this role. I'm not the villain, Colin. I'm the architect. And you just lit a match inside a structure older than both of us. I read it twice. Then smiled. Because sometimes, matches are exactly what old structures need. The morning after Karen's midnight visit, I knew we were heading into the endgame. Not just of her petty vendetta, but of something much bigger. A legacy of entitlement. A long-standing illusion of power. But before I could tear it down, I had to expose it. Properly. I called a meeting. Not an HOA meeting, those were Karen's turf, full of bureaucracy and backroom alliances. No. I hosted a community transparency forum at the marina picnic area. Open invite. No gavel. No agenda. I expected a handful to show up. 73 people came. Even Trina, the disillusioned HOA secretary, brought lemonade and folding chairs. Maya set up a projector. Nate passed out printed copies of the property maps and key excerpts from my uncle's journal. Dave showed up with 3 other maintenance workers, all of whom nodded solemnly when I thanked them for coming forward. And then I pressed play. The footage rolled. Karen, inside my cabin. Karen, accepting flowers for her wedding. Karen, directing teenagers to move my personal belongings. Karen, smiling at the camera and saying, "He won't fight this. He never does. He's a drifter." The crowd sat in stunned silence. Then came the voiceover, my uncle, on tape, describing how the HOA's inner circle had long targeted the lakefront properties. "The shoreline is currency," he said. "And the only thing stronger than water is legacy." Finally, Maya pulled up a copy of a forged zoning document, a file Dave had found on the HOA office printer. It attempted to quietly redefine the HOA boundary to include Parcel 27. My parcel. My home. The gasps turned to murmurs. The murmurs to outrage. And then a voice rang out from the back. "Where is she?" Everyone turned. Karen stood at the edge of the gathering, arms folded, clipboard conspicuously absent. No smile. No smugness. "Say your piece, Karen," I said. "You came all this way." She walked forward slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. "This was never about the cabin," she began. "It was about order. About preserving what makes Blue Harbor shores special." Someone scoffed. Another neighbor muttered, "By stealing?" Karen turned toward them, her voice suddenly sharp. "You think this community keeps itself beautiful? You think we have low crime, pristine streets, and rising property values because people just happen to care? No. We have all that because of structure. Because of rules." She turned back to me. "And because people like me do the dirty work that others are too cowardly to do." "You mean trespassing?" I asked. "I mean maintaining the dream. Even if it means stretching lines. Taking what's necessary." There it was. No pretense. No facade. And the crowd? They were done. A neighbor stood up. "My wife cried for weeks after you fined her for hanging a flag." Another, "You told my son he couldn't skateboard because it threatened community harmony." A third, "You fined me $800 because my garden hose was too bright." Karen's face cracked. Just a flicker. And then she bolted. No final speech. No gavel slam. Just the sound of her heels retreating down the marina path. The community held a vote 2 weeks later. Unanimous. Karen Whitmore was removed as HOA president. Her name was scrubbed from the website. Her proxy power revoked. Every fine she issued during her tenure was reviewed, and half were thrown out completely. The HOA charter was amended. No more off-record votes. No more comfort programs. And as for me? I kept the cabin. Rewired the security. Repainted the deck. Some evenings, I sit out there with Bear by my side, watching the gulls skim across the water. Sometimes neighbors stop by just to talk. Not about rules. About life. "The land tells stories," my uncle said. And now, it tells mine. Because when an HOA president thinks she can take your home and rewrite the rules of reality, you don't just stand your ground. You reclaim it.